Okay, so let's see if we can get this figured out by bringing together technology and old school stuff. Um, okay, so hopefully that is clear enough to be seen. I realize there is a reflection, so it may be difficult. And as it looks, I guess it is reversed, so I would have to write it backward. Yeah. Or I could hold this up to a mirror, right? Is that how that works? I think it is. Okay, so anyway, I can read this even if you can't. So this is Jenna's character and her strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. As you can see, her strength is not 17, it is actually 13. So I incorrectly recorded that, but she actually did roll 1, 2, 3 13s. She had a +1 to her wisdom because she is a wood elf. And she also got +2 to her dexterity, which was a 17. She also rolled 2 17s and a 10. 10, she put it intelligence, 13 for strength, 19 dexterity, 17 constitution, 14 wisdom, 13 charisma. Now, this was an excellent choice of race and class. This is a wood elf rogue. So the increase in the dexterity and in wisdom, I think both are amazing. Then, as you can see here, these abilities then translate into these skills. Now, I started to list out all of Jenna's skills here to show which ones she had actually decided on as a rogue to take and apply her, and I want to say this right, proficiency bonus to the addition of the different bonuses that she gets from these abilities. So her strength gives her a +1 on rolls that are requiring strength. So like if you are striking with a weapon, you get a +1 damage because you are strong. So if you are rolling a D8 because you are using a long sword, which here is a great sword is actually 2d6. That's a good one to use. Long sword is 1d8 slashing. So you would get 1d8 +1 because your strength adds 1. On weapons that are ranged or those that you load or that are that have ammunition, they benefit from your dexterity bonus. And in her case, it is a 19, which is a +4. Her constitution is a 17, so her bonus is a +3. So I incorrectly told Jenna that Magla has 4 hit points because she rolled a 4. I wasn't even thinking properly at that point in time. The +3 would then make it so that her hit point total would be 7. So Magla has 7 hit points because she rolled a 4, which is terrible. Well, I mean, it's actually right in the middle for a rogue. It's right at the a 4 out of 8 would be right close to the 50 percentile, but it's usually counted on the lower end, so it'd be like 42%. So anyway. So intelligence at 10 gives you +0. You don't get any. Wisdom being at 14, that was actually really smart. 13 would have been +1. 14, it's actually +2. Her charisma being 13, it's only a +1. So as you can see here too, the most important thing that I want to point out is Constitution is simply, and this is one of the things that's missing from 5e. What about poison? Where does that should get checked against your Constitution? There are no skills that correlate with Constitution at all, and that is a mistake in my opinion. Some of these should actually have 2, especially when it comes to survival and animal handling. Like, why wouldn't your physical fitness and your survival? Why wouldn't the physical fitness be an important factor in both animal handling and survival. That makes no sense to me. It never has. So I made a list according to each of these ability scores and where these particular skills fall. The only one for strength is athletics. Again, very debatable because acrobatics and athletics, it requires strength to do many of the acrobatic things that moves that you can imagine. And so it's really just up to you as a character and then the game master to determine, hey, if you're doing such and such move, then that part is acrobatics and this part would be athletics, right? So you may have part of it where you would want to have two checks on that, like especially if you're doing something like leaping and roll and clinging onto a wall. In my opinion, that would be acrobatics, absolutely, right? But it would be athletics once you're clinging onto it. Let me tell you, it would not be just simply acrobatics, in my opinion. It would have to combine more than one. Of course, I think why they don't have a skill for Constitution is because the main skill that Constitution gives you is not dying. That's a good skill to have, especially in D&D when you're running up against monsters. Anyway, so Dexterity has acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth. Jenna chose stealth as a rogue. Typically, you think of a rogue as a thief. There are some subtypes of rogue, and I'm not going to get into that. Just like her wood elf is a subtype of elf. I noticed that when I was talking with Aaron about, I just wrote Arabelle there. I assume you're going to call your high elf sorcerer Arabelle. Now, because you're a high elf, you actually get another type of bonus based on your racial stuff. So some of these additions to Magla's dexterity and wisdom were due to her race. Same here with Arabelle. I believe we increased your intelligence by 1 and your dexterity by 2 because of your high elf class or race. Now, despite the fact that you are a sorcerer and you have cantrips from the sorcerer spellbook, and that's because you have chosen sorcerer, because you're a high elf, you also get to choose one cantrip from the mage cantrip list that you get to use because you are a high elf. And that is endemic to being a high elf. That's why when Jenna came to me with the idea of, I want to be able to change into a cat, I said, well, if a high elf gets a cantrip, I mean, what's you're turning into a cat. There's no advantage in that. What we could do is make it so that, in my opinion, what Magla should be able to do is turn into a cat for a very brief time. Like 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes, that's it. And then she takes a negative. I had her roll for all of this. How much control does she have of it? And then how badly does it affect her? And in her case, she rolled to be, she has pretty good control over it. It's fairly typical, like she can control when it happens. But it did actually, she rolled such a percentage that it actually did affect her physically. And so that after she does it, she has to do a short rest or she loses 2 on all of her ability scores until she short rests. So she will have to track this stuff, as if she wants to turn into a cat, which we've decided to just do away with that idea, because it's not part of the rogue kit, right? So what I was trying to say was we can include it as part of the racial kit. I gave her a chance to roll a wood elf that comes from a clan where they actually found a way to perfect that ability. Perhaps that clan's nature insight was huge, and so that they learned how to shape change into a cat because they had an affinity with cats. Has nothing to do with and I forget what Kristen was going to call her character, and I don't remember what her character's name was from before. Aaron has been Arabelle a couple of times, so I'm not good with names. But obviously, the druid, we'll just call her druid. Druid over here can shape change at level 2, obviously, right? That is typical of, and I think overpowered. That when I mentioned that I think that low-level characters shouldn't have high-level powers. I don't think a second-level druid should be able to turn into anything for an appreciable amount of time. I think that the amount of time, I think there's way too many bonuses here for people because Jenna got to choose 1, 2, 3, 4 because she's a rogue. Then she gets to choose a background, which has a whole bunch of other, she gets 2 other additional skills to highlight. And then each of those, she gets a bonus on top of her, whatever bonus she would have. And unless it involves intelligence, she gets a bonus, right? She gets a +1, +4, +3, +3, +1, plus a +2 on any of the ones where she's actually trained in it. That makes sense to some degree. But in my opinion, you should have to earn these things. You shouldn't just be given them. And I guess it makes sense because as a thief, right, in the day, you had a certain percentage chance to do things like pick a lock, disarm a trap, move stealthily, move silently, right? And so forth. Avoid traps and on. And the Constitution used to mean something because you had checks against poison, right? And system shock. I assume those are still, and I need to verify that for myself, that those still are true. That if you, well, it is true. If you do double your, if Magla takes 14 hit points of damage, she is dead, period. That's it. She's dead. It's double the number of hit points she has. She doesn't get a roll. She dies. That's it. You were winked out of existence. They killed you. You're dead. You don't get to come back from it. Right? It was such a shock to your system that unfortunately that person, that entity died. That is a very real possibility in D&D, right? And it's just a character. It's just a character in a story. And it is an interesting story, right? And you do have abilities in all of these areas. Strength you have for athletics. Acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth, which of those, the dexterous choices, Jenna chose stealth because as a rogue, probably the most important thing for her to have would be her stealth, right? She thought of that over acrobatics. Although I'm sure that she debated a lot on that because that's an important skill for a rogue to have, especially one that is adventuring and not trying to just go out and necessarily thieve, which you could absolutely do, right? Okay, so the ones that are left here for charisma are deception, and then intimidation. Notice these are really important ones in my opinion. Intimidation. I didn't spell it right. You can't even read it right anyway, can you? Because it is in reverse. I have to write it the opposite way for you to be able to read it at all. But I need to be able to see this for myself. Performance is charisma. I get that. And persuasion. That makes sense. To me, I would argue that some of these you could absolutely say that these are areas where Constitution would come into play, perhaps. Your Constitution would mean that you are more stoutly put together, potentially. You would look solid or something, or athletic, or muscular, or strong, or you would appear fit, in theory. Now, that doesn't mean that having a high Constitution means that you would look exactly like whatever you're picturing in your head about that. A big fat ogre, whatever the hell that means, right? A rotund ogre that is, 10 feet tall. I forget the size of ogres, but that's probably about right. They're usually tall. Some have 2 heads. Well, those are Ettins in D&D. Anyway, so... he may have a 19 Constitution because it's just a big thing of, stuff. And it's like be stabbing through whale blubber, right? Because it's like hide, not just skin like we have. The makeup of an ogre would be stronger, more like, I think of it as the only real life parallel I can take would be like a whale or an elephant, right? It's like a bigger creature that has because they're bigger, it has a stronger skin and so forth. So it may, whatever. But part of that, I would be more intimidated by an elephant versus like, you know, a donkey, right? Although I guess a donkey could have a high constitution too. But I would think that anyway, intimidation, the charisma is the overall ability of that creature to present itself in a positive light, right? Is part of charisma. Physical attractiveness is part of charisma. Part of what I was talking about and saying that perhaps it's part of constitution, was proposing that that's part of constitution, is really here caught up in charisma, right? I mean, if it is an attractive, you know, body in whatever way that is attractive to you as a person and you as a specific race of person or character, right? You might find certain things lovely. A dwarf would find, you know, a dwarven female differently attractive than an elf female or a halfling female, and so on. But there may be some similarities that you could see through all of that, right? And that might be a good way to bring up the idea of performance and persuasion. You know, how does a bardic leaning dwarf character or even halfling character perform or persuade to, say, an elven character, a high elven character, right? It's very different than the way in which that dwarf, let's say, is a dwarf bard and wants to, perform, which you can do. There's no limitations in this as to what you can choose. So, you know, you could try to perform, but if you're going to perform to a group of elves, well, you know, do you really get a performance bonus because you're a bard and so forth? What about racial reaction, right? In my opinion, that would trump any of the, well, sorry, I don't mean to say a nasty word, but anyway, these are the skills for charisma. And if you have a difference in racial alignment or racial, and it's not alignment like your alignments, racial, in the old days, there was these sort of racial tables, and I don't actually know if modern 5e has the equivalent, reactions to the race, right? According to, you know, if you're an elf, dwarves don't get along with you. You're antagonistic at best, you know, and hostile often, right? And in my opinion, like, I think, if I recall, actually, I think hostile was always that way. You would be hostile toward the dwarf, right? You'd get along, you wouldn't kill him, but you'd just be like, yeah, whatever you want, fucker, you know. Ugh. Anyway, so I still think some of that could be true. I mean, it's not like elves are going to look on each other very, very well. A wood elf is not going to look at a high elf and be like, yeah, here's my brother. They're going to have very different experiences and very different perceptions of the world, and they probably would not clash. They would understand that they're both elves, but that doesn't mean they would like each other. You know, this one would come from a different location as this one and so forth, or at least their traditions and stuff like that. Now, part of this I'm going to make too is that you're all from the same city. And I haven't determined what city. It's just going to be something in Toril, something in, the Forgotten Realms, something that we're used to, you know, like Waterdeep, or a small town outside of Waterdeep, and you've all grown up there. Of course, Magla is going to be, 100 years old. Same with Erebal. Same with the Druid. Although she might be only 50 because she's a half elf. You know, you're all coming of age. You're all essentially 18. That's basically, in human terms, you're 18 to 21. You're in that like sweet spot of like, okay, I trained all my stuff and I'm ready to go out and do it. You know, I just got done with college, let's say 22, 21, 22. You're just out there on your own for the first time and going for it, right? That's adventuring age for a lot of people. Like Merry and Pippin were, 33, right? It would be a hobbits, sort of coming of age, right? And in fact, that was when you were considered to be out of your tweens as a hobbit, right? The 20s, that's what they called the 20s, the tween, right? I think that's right. Anyway, make sure that I've got all of the ones for charisma. Deception, intimidation, performance, persuasion. Okay, so that accounts for all of them. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 skills. Good God, that's a lot of skills to have to manage, right? And you have to make sure you know what your pluses are for each one. And so you got to know which one you're proficient in, because then you add different pluses to all these pluses, and all the pluses got to be there, or I'm going to be mad because I didn't get my pluses. Jesus, can you just roll the dice and shut up? I mean, that's what I'm going to ask you to do. Shut up and roll the dice and have fun. Shut up about the plus. Honestly, if the dice doesn't go in your favor, but you've got a good description, you roll a 15 and it's like, you didn't quite get it because you don't have the DC is 16 or better, right? Sorry, but you know what? You've described it so well. You get the bone. I don't give a crap about the +1 or not, right? I understand you want to be able to apply it, right? I get the thrill of being like, oh, that's right, I get a +4, thank God, because, now I actually get away with this. And, I might have to go, if you do that, like I may say, oh, you fail, and I go through with a descriptor, and you go, oh, wait, no, I have a +4, and you're like, oh, okay, well, wait a minute, that doesn't happen, let me change it. And you pluck out the gem from the eye of the statue, and you are successful in, sneaking down from the 17-foot high statue with guards all around it, right? Because you rolled and had a +4, right? And that would be a good one. Like you're like, yeah, okay, you're a pretty high-ish level rogue, and you're third level. I mean, and you're trying to do that. 15. 16. What that would equate to would be about a better than or a less than 20% chance, but more than so it's like 27% or so. I don't know the exact math, but it's a 27-ish% chance to succeed, and that's about right. Let's say you're there are, let's say, 4 orc guards surrounding a 17-foot statue with a jeweled eyes, and you want to go up and steal one of the jewels. Okay, I give you you roll a 16 or better, and you do it. But you describe how you're like, I carefully creep along behind the lead orc on the left-hand side's shoulder. So like there are 4 orcs, and so I sneak behind his shoulder, and I pick up a pebble, and I throw it this way, out to... they don't have it. See, yeah. I throw it out this way. Here are your 4 orcs, right? You snuck behind this orc here. You've snuck behind. I sneak behind him here, and I throw a pebble out this way, right? Do I make a noise? And I say, sure, yeah, you make a noise. It makes a noise. And the orc notices, right? All of them, in fact. These 2 walk, and this one's like, what the hell is that? And then I'm able to sneak up the statue, and I use my +1 dagger to pry at the eye, the left eye of the statue of the orc god that is here. And you roll a 15, right? And and you, or whatever you roll, and the total would be a 15 with your +4, even, let's say, right? Your dexterity is +4, and so it's a 15. Roll an 11, it's a 15, and I say, well, okay, but you had such a good description of how it went about it. I'd be like, how I would do that, actually probably would say, okay, you are successful in getting the gem out, and you get down to the base, and all 4 orcs have walked here, and one spots you and says, what was that there? So you don't get mauled by orcs. Like if you rolled terrible, I'd be like, well, you fall into the middle of the group of orcs, and they'd be maybe right here. They'd be closer to where you are. They're farther away, and only one notices, right? And so then you have in my opinion, a chance to then say, okay, yeah, well, then I jump up as quick as I can, right? Be thinking when an encounter happens like this is where these abilities that you have come into play, and the skills are then, that would be like an acrobatics check, right? To say that they, it would be a stealth check. It would absolutely be a stealth check most of all. There would be some acrobatics in that, in my opinion, though, too, and a certain degree of strength to climb up the thing. So I would then say, because you're a rogue, right, you get many of those as, certainly you would do that better than if a cleric wanted to do that. But there's no reason why the cleric can't try it, right? And I would say, well, you would check on stealth, but, most clerics are probably not going to have a 19 dexterity. They're going to want to have a high wisdom. Of course, if you roll like Jenna rolled, it won't matter, would it? Because you have two pretty high numbers, 2 17s she rolled. That's pretty impressive. That's why I wanted everyone to roll, because sometimes you roll really well. But, of course, then she rolled terrible on her hit points and only rolled a 4. So, anyway. Okay, so we do have to go through and figure out what background Magla has, so that those additional skills and those pluses are put in. I noticed that when Jenna put in her bonuses for each of these skills, she only matched it with the requisite ability score. So when she recorded her plus for acrobatics, she put a +4, which is what her dexterity bonus is, and that's not quite correct, because she has acrobatics as a skill that she is proficient in. She not only gets the +4 from her dexterity, but she also adds in the proficiency bonus, a +2. So she does actually get a +6 on acrobatics, not just a +4. Okay, so for that she would get a +6. Animal handling, because it is dictated by wisdom, which for her is a +2, is a +2. That's correct. Arcana is intelligence, +0 for Jenna, because she has a 10 intelligence, which is just average. Strength, athletics, +1 for her, so she has a +1. Deception, charisma is 13, so she also has a +1. And so on. Charisma for insight here is +2. Wisdom is 2. History is nothing, because of intimidation is the next one for charisma. So that's one that's +1. So, I'm sorry. Actually, that's where I was going to say. She put down +2 for insight. Sorry, I got a little mixed up there. Insight, she has +2 written here. Now, she has chosen insight as one that she is proficient in. She has that as a choice as a rogue. So she wrote down +2, which is not incorrect, because she has a +2 because of her 14 wisdom. Again, because she's a wood elf and she got to add 1 to her 13. So, but the reality is she gets a +4 in insight because she gets +2, and then +2 again for her proficiency bonus. So that is very important. Investigation is based on intelligence, so she doesn't get any bonus there. Medicine, she actually does better on that by far than she does investigation. And for a rogue, that's kind of strange, right? Because you have a better handle on medicine than you do investigating things. Checking things out and investigating things is investigation checks. That's a very important, in my opinion, part of D&D, and a very important part of what that's right, intelligence. I didn't get that I didn't write that down. I knew I missed one. I did. I missed investigation here for. So primarily, the two mental, intelligence and wisdom are very important for D&D, for a lot of very important checks. Your skills are very much related to these two particular items, because even wisdom even dictates how well you do with animals, right? and your insight, which is something that, you know, as you're trying to discern something, insight comes up all the time. And you, yeah, we never did get to initiative. And so, doesn't that also benefit your initiative? That's where I'm not certain. Let me look here. But anyway, we can cover most of that when we do.